In the world of sim racing, 60 Plus Racing Adventures stands in a unique position, an iRacing league for drivers 60 years of age or older. These are many drivers who've had racing as a passion in their heart their whole lives. And now 60 Plus Racing Adventures gives drivers of this age a place to come together and race on iRacing. And it's just grown and grown and grown over the years, from an open wheeler league to now across all sorts of cars, disciplines, GT3, oval, others, but now also the BMW M2 CS competition. This is their first season with the BMW M2, as we take a look at how the championship is going to finish. The 60 Plus Racing Adventures BMW League here on RaceSpotTV. David Haynes with Lorenzo Bonda, Ramiro Augustin Cisneros in the production. This is what the schedules looked like. Kicked off at Brands Hatch. They went to Ulten Park, Zandvoort, Rudskogen, Algarve, Nordschleife on the Industry Fart and Summit Point, Mugello, Silverstone, VIR North, Misano, and now Long Beach to crown a champion in these BMW touring cars. We'll get a look at that, Lorenzo. Where are you going first? The racetrack, the Hooters, the yacht in the harbour, or penthouse of an apartment?
Aquarium, easy.
Oh, to sea otters. Love sea otters. Absolutely. Good choice.
Yeah, man. It's always gonna be my choice. Go to the aquarium. It's like my choice to go to Long Beach. It's in my wishes as we look through the season standings so far.
Greg Seitz, one of the recently 60 plus drivers, is up top from Steve Greenwood, Russ Addy, Remigio De Pasqua, Ragnar Wisloff, Ed Benson, Leif Hellberg, David Bradley, Richard Coulomb, and Peter Hallstrom. While the open wheelers of 60 Plus Racing Adventures have 33 seasons of competition behind them, this is the first year of the BMW M2 CS series, and so it's slowly building its numbers. And we'll take a look at what the racing for these cars in this category looks like today, and I'm sure many people will be hoping that this becomes one of the growing and long-lasting categories of 60 Plus Racing Adventures as we take our look around beautiful Long Beach Raceway. And the beautiful weather as well. That is not bad. That is a good tourist proposition with clear skies. 24 degrees at 8:30 in the morning. We've got a 60-minute race ahead of us. We're qualifying to set that grid, and 60 minutes of racing on a street circuit can be a difficult proposition.
Absolutely, and not only it's a very difficult proposition, but I would say Long Beach makes this a little bit more difficult, right? This current iteration is one of the, if I could say, the tidiest version of what we had from Long Beach over its history, right, as being as a racetrack. Hosted F1 back in the 70s and 80s. I think once in the 80s, if my memory doesn't fail me. It might, but I know also hosted many times kart from Indy, so it's going to be an interesting circuit how the low power, the M2 CS cars handle instead of an F1 or an open wheeler would around a racetrack like this.
So this is the out lap for everyone, including Eugene Clark. Oh, and Mike Grandy, what's he doing?
He's not stuck on the hairpin to try to get himself into a launch, because I know sometimes people do that.
I think the first driver who might start a timed flying laps, Ragnar Wisloff and Leif Hellberg as well. Here's Steve Greenwood. Great to see some interesting new liveries on this BMW as well. Mad Cow. Oh, for Greg Seitz. Okay. It's interesting every car we look at, every time we see. This is Greg Seitz navigating over that crest there. Late apex into the right-hander here. Underneath all of the overpasses and bridges between the convention center, the aquarium, the apartments, etc. Looking for a braking zone at the end of the straight.
our braking zone, though, very underrated braking zone. It's easy for us to see mistakes like that in that corner. People misjudge it kind of easily when he goes on that right-hander.
So this is Steve Greenwood starting a flying lap. Turn 1, you carry so much speed down the front straight into the 90-degree left-hander where the wall comes up to greet you on the exit. Then through the fountain section, beautiful there. As you go between the wall, the planter boxes and the wall again, right-hander here around to loop you back around. Off camber as you can take lots of curb through there. Track opens up with an immense amount of width, but you've got to get all the way across over to the other side of the racetrack where the circuit's a little bit curved into the braking zone. Flowing speed through the left-hander where the track just keeps turning on exit. And again, you've got to get to the left-hand side of the road because this is where it's critical to turn back right, take the apex, and float speed in this car. I get the impression this is a car that has sort of almost GT4 levels of grip, but without the GT4 levels of power. I'm getting the idea that flowing corner speed and momentum seems pretty important for this BMW M2 CS. Hairpin's the final corner, and then we'll know what this lap looks like, Lorenzo.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the hairpin apex, you kind of have to go into a wide arc and go basically full lock into the car and try to clip the apex and get a proper exit so you can maximize your speed out of it. And his lap 1.2 seconds lower than Ragnar Svistlov's current lap. It's kind of and then shows how hard it is actually to do a lap around this racetrack.
Yeah, so Greenwood's time sent him to second. Now that becomes third because Greg Seitz slots in between. Seitz is going to have one more lap here. And here's Ross Addy in the 111. No lap time yet on his first flying lap. It's interesting deliveries across all the BMWs here. A lot of them seem to be for food.
They're doing that in the worst time of day for me, man. I don't know what time is it in there for you, David. How early in the morning it is for you, but for me here, 8:30 p.m. in the evening, it's tempting, you know.
It's basically breakfast time, so maybe we'll go back to the car that's got cereal on it. No, Russ Addy, gee, it does look like they struggle with enough steering lock through that hairpin. I think every car does, but these seem to bog down a little bit. Get another lap time from Ragnar Wisloff, who remains top of the board at the moment in this qualifying. Russ Addy is going to go to sixth. With that time, Steve Greenwood barely pips Greg Seitz. But that's Greenwood last time, and Greg Seitz is on another flying one there. And as he completes it, he jumps back into second place.
Yeah, good lap. Actually, the only one to get really, really close to Vislav's lap at Long Beach. Now we're with Remigio Di Pasqua, so seeing his red livery turtle machine going around the corners, you can see a very happy turtle, something that you often don't see in a race car livery.
Ace Team Italian Turtles, or maybe they're just turtle now, but yeah, it's Remigio Di Pasqua. Seems to be enjoying this BMW M2 competition. He's fifth outright at the moment and completing another lap that might be an improvement. Here he goes to navigate the hairpin. That looks pretty good. Like he got enough grip to the front early on that then he could unwind the steering a little bit through the hairpin as he brought the speed up. Now he's bringing the car across to the timing line there at the start-finish line, and he'll jump up into fourth. So that time becomes an improvement. Russ Addy, the last driver left that I can see who can set an improved qualifying time. And I think it was fractionally just quicker than his earlier lap. Checking that now. First 30.777. Next lap 30.458 for Russ Addy. And Josef Sturm is going to practice his pit entry It's an interesting one here. Very interesting pit lane at Long Beach. It's long, it's curved, and you have just got to look for the gap in the concrete wall as an entry.
Yeah. Sometimes I do get bad memories from that pit entry. You could argue it's a very unique pit entry, even for a street circuit, because you often don't get that. I think a few racetracks in North America also had that. I think Vancouver had something similar to it. I'm trying to think. I think there was one in Australia that had a very similar pit entry, David, back in supercars.
I mean, they did some interesting street circuits over the years. Hamilton, Canberra, Sydney, Olympic Park.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Canberra basically was interesting, but I don't know if it was that, tight as it is in Long Beach.
Seeing Russ Addy continue on track, but with no chance of improving his qualifying time from 6th. 16 cars, 14 of which have set qualifying times. Just 0.12 of a second separates the front row of the grid, Ragnar Wisloff from Greg Seitz. So which exhibit at the aquarium for you, Lorenzo?
Yeah. My destination whenever I go to Long Beach in California, as the timer runs out, and we're going to get our grid going for this final round of the M2 Cup.
With 60 minutes ahead of us on the streets of Long Beach, for the 60 Plus Racing Adventures BMW M2 CS Series. The front row is Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz. Steve Greenwood and Remigio De Pasqua are 3rd and 4th. Leif Hellberg has qualified 5th. Russ Addy in 6th. Then Franz Josef Sturm, Richard Colum, Peter Hallstrom, Steve O'Malley, Randy Shoemake, Eugene Clark. And then last drivers to qualifying times were Neil Canning and Jerry Kerr. We didn't see much of them in qualifying. We'll have plenty of time to look at them in the race. And Mike Randy and JC Hay were ready to go. Standing start for these cars. Green flag on the streets of Long Beach. Everyone leaves a little bit of tyre smoke as we get the BMWs racing down towards turn 1 on a beautiful California day. Great time to be 60 plus and racing. Ragnar Wisloff's gotten a decent getaway. It's the battle for 3rd and 4th that gets spicy now. Steve Greenwood just holding off Remigio De Pasqua. And Leif Hellberg looks a little around the outside of turn 1 to try to gain some positions. Single file through the beautiful fountain section. Don't put your tyres too far up in the garden bed. They are beautifully prepared.
Yeah, we don't want to see the Garner trying to put more planes into the garden itself. I think a little bit of a big run for Leif Hellberg, but managed to keep the car off the wall. One important thing in this race is obviously keep your car off the wall, because there's isn't much runoff areas in this circuit, if you want to call it a runoff area.
Absolute lightning start from Mike Grandy somehow, who's up 5 positions. Russ Addy has gotten ahead of Leif Hellberg, and now looking like he's almost putting some pressure on Remigio De Pasqua back there, as Steve Greenwood in 3rd, pretty close to Greg Seitz in 2nd. That looks a little deep, a little out of sorts from De Pasqua, so I think Russ Addy is going to maybe look to go a bit wide on the entry to the hairpin here. Cut back, that's exactly what he does. He goes wide, he cuts back, and it's a long run down the front straight. Flagman's just got his eyes on all of the proceedings with 1 lap completed at Long Beach. Mike Grandy, I don't know how he got all those spots at the start. Maybe everyone else was far more cautious and tentative braking into turn 1. Grandy, who had no qualifying time, I said maybe he can go forward. Well, absolutely he can. But going sideways and wide is Remigio de Pasqua. Russ Addy up into 4th place. Didn't even have to show the nose so much. Just waited for a mistake from his rival, and he's up 2 spots already.
Absolutely. Good start from Russ right there, and already trying to go on the charge against Steve Greenwood, but he knows the charge is going to be a little bit too much, maybe potentially, because it's a 3-second gap that nearly separates them, and more so there's the Pasco, there's Halbert, the Josef Stuben's not far behind, so any tiny mistake that Addy does can be very costly to him as he nicks the wall. I think that's Greenwood nicking the wall.
Did look like Greenwood got a bit wide and kicked up some dust there. Here's Russ Addy. Oh, you've gone a bit wide. I've got you covered into the fountain section. Nice set of dolphins. Steve Greenwood's heading for pit entry? He is. So that scrape that he had against the wall must be more damaging than we thought. Steve Greenwood, very early pit stop here, perhaps with some damage down the left side of the car. And Russ Addy, he's picking one off at a time. He's up to a podium position now.
Absolutely. Looking from that angle that we saw when he came into pit entry, the car looked to be a little bit off on the axle of the right rear, so that's going to be a little bit unfortunate for Steve. But of course, 16-minute race, it's still a lot it can happen. So still got to put your foot down and try to hammer down the best way you can moving forward.
This is your race leader, Ragnar Wisloff, but he's less than a second ahead of Greg Seitz, who seems entirely capable of going with him for the moment. And that's the corner where it looked like Greenwood got wide and found the wall even beyond the tyres. First and seconds pop through here. Minimum speed about 50 kilometers an hour there in the hairpin, which is not a very racing car kind of speed, but it's what you got to do to get around. And then at the end of the front straight, Greg Seitz in the slipstream is past 200 kilometers an hour already, as he looks to pick up the fastest lap of the race. He gets to about 230 kilometers an hour before braking into turn 1.
Yeah, and it's good that Seitz is keeping Wisloff at bay, so we have a really good battle for the lead in this race going on. So let's see what Seitz is still engaged on this car as we look through Steve Greenwood's nick on the wall. Oh, double nick. Ow. Yeah, that's going to cause some lengthy damage on his M2.
Yeah, wide, and then almost just caught the end of the tyre barrier that turned him into the concrete wall. Pretty ugly when you look at it, and of course that's why all the dust and everything was in the air with that hit from Steve Greenwood. Brought Russ Addy up into 3rd, but is that Richard Coulomb with some problems? Now, you can get a slowdown penalty cutting some of the curbing earlier on, but that's not sure that's what's happened for Richard Coulomb, but he's dropped back somewhat. Steve O'Malley's also picked up a mechanical black flag, the old meatball flag for some damage. So that's 9th. O'Malley who's got that. Oh, that car's not turning proper, is it?
No, it isn't. It's struggling quite a lot.
Now in the background. wall hard was Neil Canning at the hairpin. He's gone nose first in. Now Russ Addy from third's gone into the wall on the outside of turn one. They've all gone mental in the last minute, apparently. And so the pressure is on Steve O'Malley right now, driving the world's largest Ayrton Senna helmet. With Randy Shoemake, Steve O'Malley, Eugene Clark. No, there's a problem for Steve O'Malley at some point here. And then with Russ Addy's problems, he's got Remigio de Pasqua looking to go back past. Leif Hellberg and Franz Josef Sturm just quietly achieving there. Now,
and I think...
Did Ayrton Senna race a BMW or a BMW-powered car? I don't think so.
You got me thinking now. I'm trying to actually go into his days when he actually did some like not car racing, but tin top racing. I can't recall.
Look at that for Neil Canning. He's just ended up on the marbles there or something. The front's never gripped and it's just understeered into the wall. He's knocked the bumper off, which, knowing BMW, means he's probably done one of the forward-facing sensors, and it's going to cost $20,000 to replace. It's JC Hay, again with another driver picking up some understeer in the back straight. It's been pretty brutal, actually, out there lately. Yes, he went wide at turn one.
Yeah. I was gonna mention, like, I know this race. I know the M2 in iRacing, it's not the easiest car for you to handle because it has less power than the M2 that drives regularly for the NLS, for the Nürburgring Stracken series, right? It has less power, and I know aerodynamically it kind of struggles a little bit, so it goes more on driver's touch. You kind of have to be one with the car of sorts. So, and it's a very hard racetrack for you to be one with the car consistently as you have to be in Long Beach. And not only do you have to have that, you have to deal with the marbles as well, which are ever present. And I'm gonna say it's quite surprising to see a lot of marbles on the racetrack.
They were all already there, weren't they? It's not like we've put them down in qualifying. It's just sort of, they're always there. From Neil Canning's perspective, he's offline initially, isn't he?
Yeah, he's already in the marbles on the right-hand side tire.
Yeah, it's how you set up for the hairpin that's so important, to stay all the way to the left-hand side. He's gone in too quick there to be able to make the turn from the tight angle. Race lead is still underneath a second. Greg Seitz has the fastest lap of the race. He was more to sort of half a second behind. Now he's gone to about a second behind. There's going to be a pit stop in the 60-minute race, and there's one driver who's already made theirs. It's Mike Grandy. So he rose from 15th on the grid up to 6th, and then has pitted. So he's taken 20 seconds of service. Everyone else that we've seen on pit lane is taking significantly more service to try to put rear bumpers back on and realign suspension and whatever else you may have you. And this is JC Hay into quick understeer, goodbye bumper, headlights, probably also suspension. Indicators were gone for sure.
Pretty much everything on the front left.
.95 of a second between the leaders as they come off the final hairpin. 0.91, 0.90, 0.89. So there is definitely enough of a slipstream down the front straight here that you put some pressure on, but you need to be able to come off that hairpin a little bit closer than that. So maybe Greg Seitz is just playing the games at the moment.
And it shows how hard it can be overtaking in Long Beach of sorts, right? Because there isn't, not only is a very tight racetrack, you're gonna have to rely more, I think, on a potential mistake from the driver in front of you for you to get closer and potentially ride the draft and then do that overtake. While I think we're seeing more of those cars in the pit lane. Steve, from what it looks like, Steve Greenwood finally coming out, and I think the other one, Steve O'Malley, is still trying to do some service.
Yeah, at one point there were 4 mechanical black flags out there being shown. We're down to just 2 because Steve Greenwood is complete. Russ Addy is still in pit lane, but I think they've retracted the mechanical black flag, and one's still showing for JC Hay and Steve O'Malley. And Steve O'Malley's the one that we saw on the lane waiting on those repairs. Ragnar Wisloff's kind of trying to break the toe here a little bit, if he can. They now have a 17-second lead over Remigio de Pasqua, the third-place driver. It's been Russ Addy in that spot, then Russ Addy out of that spot. Remigio de Pasqua backing up a little bit, perhaps towards Leif Hellberg. That's Josef Sturm in the 130s on the lap just completed. Then Peter Hallstrom in 7th, catching Richard Coulomb for 6th. And we've had a couple of cars come back out on the lane. For me, the thing to watch, though, is that early pit stop from Mike Grandy. He was quick, but is it going to put him in traffic? Is he going to need to do a chunk more overtaking? As the stop come too early for him, he's the sort of 3rd or 4th fastest driver on track at the moment, but he's down in 12th to keep an eye on. Gap extends and then closes and extends a little bit between our race leaders again.
The only thing that I'm trying to think about is we're still looking in the top battle between the leaders, and I think down below is Pasqua and Hellberg. The interesting thing for me is, I know Grandy, like you said, is the 3rd fastest, but I'm trying to remember if there's any restrictions in terms of fuel for this championship. Because I know this is a 60-minute race. This is one of those that have a stopper, so you can put that at 50% or even something above that. It's not going to be enough for you to maybe do 45 minutes on the gap. On the dot over here, 45, 47 minutes tops on the dot, and you still have fuel remaining to the end of the race. Actually, to the end, still fuel remaining on your tank, actually.
Top of screen, the battle for the lead. Bottom of screen, the battle for the podium at the moment. Club Scandinavia, Ragnar Wisloff. Club Northwest, Greg Seitz. Club Italia, Remigio de Pasqua. And Club Scandinavia, Leif Hellberg. So it's on that left-hand side curve that you want to be to then make your switch into the hairpin and really open up this otherwise incredibly tight U-turn corner. And from a fastest lap of the race of a 128.635, Greg Seitz now sets a 129.3. RaceSpotTV live timing is available. And what it's showing is that everyone, based on either tyre temperature or whatever the situation, just backing it up, backing the pace up about half a second a lap.
Because you can, I think this is the first time also lap that the Pasqua was a little bit faster, but still the gap is tremendous. It's kind of impressive to see that Seitz and Wisloff, despite being close to one another, opened up a 20-second gap, even with all the occurrences that happened on track.
This is the pace of the cars in 3rd place that they're opening the gap up on. We ride on board with Leif Hellberg, sticking in 3rd gear through a lot of the previous section, briefly down to 2nd here, and then shifting up. Third onto the back straight. Eyes set on Remigio de Pasqua. Now, second or first for the hairpin? Second.
I'm surprised that he stays in second gear. I would normally put the, I know LMP, GTPs are first gear. Some of the GT3s I think are also first gear in there because you want to try to have all the torque coming out of the
But Lorenzo, you make a critical mistake assuming that BMW put sensible gear ratios in their race car. How many gears does the M4 GT4 have? 7. How many are useful on a racetrack? 3.
5.
Oh,
I was gonna say, but
no,
then
no.
again, no.
Because
you
6th and 7th are useless.
True.
It's maybe 4. Maybe 4. Depending on the racetrack. And then the consideration I was going to give for this is, for example, the LMP2, that's a high revving, naturally aspirated engine. Here, it's a somewhat restricted turbocharged engine. So the peak power is probably very, very broad through the rev range of these cars. The engine control works a lot like the control ECUs for GT4 cars as well, where there are colored USB sticks that provide different power mappings and control the ECU.
Yeah, it makes sense. Then again, it goes the fact that you drove, I think, the M4 more than I did. Being part of a team that drives the M4 as one of its main GT4 cars. I will not say the team name. If you want to say it, then I'll go ahead and say it, David. But I know you have more experience than I do. It's kind of like I've used fifth before on a GT4 back in, I think, in the old iteration, but I don't recall seeing the fifth gear being all that useful in the new iteration.
Almost as silly as the Audi RS3 LMS with the DSG gearbox, where the lowest 3 gears were useless and you still hit the rev limiter in the top gear. So here's Mike Grandy. Or maybe I should go on about the McLaren GT4 as well. Here's Mike Grandy. So he had that early stop. He's dropped himself towards the tail of the field. Oh, Steve Greenwood. He had the damage. He left pit lane. And he's gone and perhaps done a tiny bit more. But Mike Grandy, with his early stops, put himself a little further back through the field. It looks like couldn't get towards day done for Steve Greenwood, unfortunately. So Grandy's got a bit of passing to do. He's caught Jerry Kerr about 2 seconds a lap here.
It's gonna happen eventually. Just a matter of where and when.
So with the pace that Mike Grandy was catching Jerry Kerr realizes what's going on. He knows what we know. Stays to one side and lets Mike Grandy go through up into 11th place. Neil Canning is the next car, and Mike Grandy's lapping about 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than Neil Canning. So that 7-second gap. I'm not a mathematician, but probably only got 3 or 4 laps left in it before he's up there. And what he's doing with his pit stop strategy really is undercutting a lot of these cars in the mid-pack. I don't know if he's undercutting Remigio de Pasqua and Leif Hellberg in their battle for 3rd and 4th. This is how early Jerry Kerr said, on you go. So he didn't wait too late on that one. Grandy's already passed Neil Canning. Canning must have run down a runoff or had a mistake or gone into the wall. What's happened to Neil Canning?
Is that going to be like not again moment that we saw Kenny having a little bit earlier when he dinked the wall? and lost his front bumper. I think is still does Kenny still have his front bumper on the 15?
No.
And I think we have our answer. Just bam.
That car just is not interested in turning at all. And that is where Mike Grandy got him closed down all that gap. So Hellberg gets a little bit closer to Remigio de Pasqua. Greg Seitz is back a little closer to Ragnar Wisloff. Might be heading towards a lot of these drivers thinking about pit stops. Hallstrom goes ahead of Richard Coulomb. I think it's sort of simmered a little bit, but what you've got is almost all of your top 10 need to make a pit stop, and if they're thinking about sooner rather than later, they maybe pick it up a little bit. It's Hellberg with a much wider line through the hairpin, and I think he's got Remigio de Pasqua on the ropes here. Take a look at the ongoing damage for Neil Canning, and you see where the radiators and intercoolers are placed.
Yeah, and that's going to be a long pit stop for him. That's for sure. I would estimate at least 2 minutes in the pit lane just for repairs.
Yeah, so Neil Canning had resisted going to pit lane all this time, but he's in. Now this is Jerry Kerr going the lap down. Ragnar Wisloff's like, I'll go across to the racing line as early as I can, please, and thank you. And Greg Seitz not quite afforded the same luxury, just based on the timing of where they passed Jerry Kerr down there.
I wonder if Sight is trying to play like the fuel game of sorts. I don't know if you can actually do fuel saving right here, as you probably would have wanted to in another car. But I don't think that's the mindset that Sights might be going through in this one. It's just trying to get closer and stay within 10, maybe potentially be on overtake class. A car has stopped. Grandy's back in the pits.
Yeah, the charge from Mike Grandy's come to a stop. He looks like he's towed from his charging position, having passed Jerry Kerr and Neil Canning, and to be closing in on some others and closing in on a top 5.
This is why Long Beach is, for some, one of the least favorite tracks for people to drive. I know it's a crime, kind of like what I'm saying, but I know some people say that because it is just a very hard track for you to drive on and be perfect on every single lap and do a consistent thing.
It's got exciting for third place into turn 1 on this lap, where Remigio de Pasqua felt the need to take a defensive line versus Leif Hellberg. Once that happens, then it sort of sets you up to need to defend the next corner, need to defend the next corner, need to defend the next corner. So Hellberg would have been interested to see that. Yeah, so this is how Hellberg's doing it. Taking a significantly different line through the hairpin. Trying to get that good launch. Don't think he's quite as close as he was a lap ago. Greg Seitz just gives a tiny hello to a bit of the concrete. So he pushed a tiny bit wide.
Meanwhile, from what it looks like, Columbus losing a lot of ground after that battle to Holstrom. Holstrom breaking away. I think Shoemake is being able to not be faster on a lap by lap basis, but but he's keeping those 2 seconds consistent to Columbus. So there's a potential P7 battle down the line. Who knows?
Pace was very evenly matched between Holstrom and Coulomb for a little while, and then Holstrom got past, so I'm going to guess a mistake from Coulomb using a little bit of the runoff area somewhere. And then he's dusted himself off, gotten back to speed. Favorite breed of dolphin, and why is it bottlenose? So this is Mike Grandy. So he was charging up through the field, had already made his pit stop at turn 1, just a little bit of understeer at the apex. It's a bit too quick, and then it bounces heavily off one wall and into the other. And, you know, if the wall was a meter further back, I think he'd be okay, but it's not. The wall is where it always is, and Mike Grandy is where he isn't always, which is in the wall.
Yeah, unfortunate to see that. He's still in the racetrack, in the race, 3 laps down, which is good. You know, trying to get to the end. I know there's halfway a little bit of more than halfway of this race left to go, but basically the damage has been done as Gloom finally to get on a recovery charge against Hallstrom. And Stu Maswal recovering a little bit of the time he has lost to Hellberg and Pasqua too.
Tiny bit wide from Pasqua. I believe Hellberg needed to be a car length or so closer. Hellberg's got very similar pace. It's just making it difficult for him to pass at the moment. Look at how late the brake lights come on there for Pasqua. Struggling with the front tyres getting a bit hot, I think. It's always interesting when you see the brake lights come on sort of really deep into a corner. You're like, that thing is not turning like they want, because otherwise you wouldn't be braking 2/3 of the way around the corner. Again, it's interesting to watch how Pasqua is doing this. There's a few times it's like, is that going to turn? Maybe needs a little bit of help, and they try to give it that help.
Sometimes walls might be your best friend. But it's kind of funny that every time he goes on over here on the back stretch, going into EC sideway, his car skids a little bit on the power. So it isn't damaging his tires, that's for sure. But it's just an interesting way to view how someone tries to get under power. And it's so easy for you to be on the limit of what the grip wants to give you outside of a tricky corner like turn number 8.
20 laps completed and 20 more to go. That's the halfway point. So we're getting a couple more pit stops. Jerry Kerr drives into pit lane for his stop. See how it compares to the 20 seconds of fuel that it looks like Mike Grandy had taken. And we'll get an idea what we expect the pit stops to look like in this race. Everyone's pushing on pretty hard. Ragnar Wisloff almost giving a little tap to the wall. Top of your screen, Remigio de Pasqua was almost close to a little bit of wall contact. Peter Hallstrom is going to look to pit as well. So from this top 4 and their battles, who do we think is going to pit first?
I estimate them, I have to guess, maybe Wisloff might come in first. Or not. Sites just says, well, I'll just shove every prediction that you guys have, commentators, and go myself first.
He's looking at the traffic for Ragnar Wisloff, and he's thinking this might be a slightly slow lap for Wisloff. And Greg Seitz is going to look to undercut him for Ragnar Wisloff. I think it's Steve O'Malley and Eugene Clark that he's looking at going a lap down. Here is Greg Seitz, pitted from second place in his pit stall. Now, Eugene Clark's pit stop was 27 seconds. Peter Holstrom's was 52. Don't know what that is with. But Greg Seitz now just passing 21 seconds. Remigio de Pasqua and Leif Hellberg will go past him, but they haven't stopped yet. Franz Josef Stumm goes into pit lane. He was running 5th. And so just past the halfway point, we're starting to see pit stops from these BMW M2 CS in 60 plus racing adventures. The first season of running these cars as a league within the 60 plus racing adventures family. I believe it's been a total of 27 drivers across the championship year. See if this is one that will grow like GT3, Super Formula Lights, and NASCAR stock cars have for 60 plus racing adventures as incredibly popular and long-lasting championships.
Yeah, and like you said before, it's always good to see a tight-knit community of senior people. You know, throwing it down on the racetrack, have a little bit of fun. You have basically flavors for everybody of your preference. You can have some NASCAR. You can have some open wheels, tin tops. So it's always good to see races like this done by tightly knit communities such as the 60 plus racing adventures.
Still no pit stop yet for Ragnar Wisloff, Remigio de Pasqua, Leif Hellberg, Randy Shoemake, Richard Coulomb, or Eugene Clark. I'd have thought maybe Leif Hellberg eventually gets bored of this, bored of reading Turtle on the rear bumper of de Pasqua. See, the problem is, while he can read Turtle, he can't see the awesome graphic that's on the front and the side of an incredibly silly turtle.
I mean, you can kind of see the silly turtle on the bottom right of the bumper. I think on the bottom left as well. Of course, not in height.
Just keep an eye on the time in Colin left's the screen. The gap right now between Ragnar Wisloff, who hasn't stopped, and Greg Seitz, who has 48.5. If that grows, then Ragnar Wisloff will be proven correct for staying out. If that begins to shrink, Greg Seitz might be undercutting Wisloff for the race lead. All race, haven't really seen them separated by more than a second. Same's been true here of Remigio de Pasqua and Leif Hellberg. So the in-laps, pit stop times, out-laps become super critical. Pit entries just before the first overbridge. Neither of these drivers go for it either.
I think for them, because of traffic and everything, they're gonna stay committed as late as they can be. So, the question is how late it is on these cars. We don't know.
Richard Coulomb pits. The Club Canada driver with a quite French-looking name. So his pit crew will be in pit stall number 8 because he qualified 8th. Ragnar Wisloff also pits from the race lead. Exciting times on pit lane. And so it was still about 48 seconds between Wisloff and Greg Seitz. So Wisloff is going to make his pit stop. Greg Seitz' pit stop time was 21 seconds. So that's the number we're looking for with Ragnar Wisloff, whose pit stall is all the way at pit exit, as he was the pole sitter. Pasqua and Hellberg going through the hairpin now. Hellberg goes to pit lane. Ragnar Wisloff's stop a little bit shorter than what Greg Seitz was. Seitz is on the front straight. But you only just see him appearing behind Ragnar Wisloff. Wisloff's in that pit exit lane that you can then turn around and into one, and Wisloff retains his race lead. Remigio de Pasqua is scored in the race lead for the moment, still needs to make a pit stop. But Wisloff ahead of Greg Seitz is pretty important.
And nearly full seconds faster on the pit lane for Wisloff in comparison to Seitz. Kind of surprising to see that. Of course, you go into the pit lane faster or later, you're gonna fuel less. On paper, you'd stay less, but still very surprising to see this gap between Wisloff and Seitz. 1.4 seconds, 1.3, 1.4 seconds.
It's the tortoise and the hare, as Remigio de Pasqua leads the race. Hellberg is aiming for an undercut as de Pasqua pits. Hellberg stopped just one lap ago. Ragnar Wisloff back to the lead of the race. Greg Seitz 1.3 seconds behind him. Randy Shoemake hasn't stopped yet. Now, I don't think Ragnar Wisloff's car went up on the jacks, but Remigio de Pasqua's car has gone up in the air. I don't remember seeing Ragnar Wisloff's car do that. Oh, Greg Seitz might have pretty close to the wall. And so this stop is already past 20 seconds for de Pasqua, whereas for Hellberg it was just 22. I think Hellberg's going to go through into third place. De Pasqua made a mistake here.
That's a good question. I haven't seen anything, to be very honest.
So 37 seconds. Leif Hellberg goes through into fourth place. Franz Josef Sturm goes past Remigio de Pasqua. And instead of holding down third place, I think it's be fifth at best. And he gets a black flag for cutting the pit exit. He's cut the line on pit exit. He's had a long stop. Now he's got a drive-through penalty. It's fallen apart, this podium for Remigio de Pasqua, unfortunately. I think it's a strategy miscue to take tyres, and it's a significant miscue to get an unsafe pit exit.
It's a Roman tragedy, man. Unfortunate to see that, but it can happen. And plus, the unsafe pit exit in Long Beach is brutal, man. It's very easy for you to get that.
Drive-through penalty will cost you about 30 seconds here as well, because we talked about it's a long lane. It actually accommodates IndyCar and IMSA, both series grid on the pit lane here. It's so long, and it's not fast either at 64 kilometers an hour. So that will cost. Randy Shoemake's in the pit lane for his stop. It's the last pit stop we needed to see, and Shoemake takes just 17 seconds of fuel. So the running order will be Ragnar Wisloff, Greg Seitz, Leif Hellberg, Franz Josef Sturm, Randy Shoemake, and then Remigio de Pasqua as he completes his drive-through. How much more careful do you think he's going to be with the pit exit this time?
Extra. Totally conservative.
That clears the drive-through penalty for de Pasqua. Now he's going down pit exit, going a lap down to Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz. He waits all the way to the blue cone this time. That is a lesson learned the hard way.
Yeah, fortunately, I still think there is a potential for a 7th place for him to scrap. I don't know how much of a gap it is to Hallstrom. About 9 seconds, 9.3. Yeah, it's doable. It's going to be hard, but it's doable.
Ragnar Wisloff looks to be keeping 1.5 seconds to Greg Seitz at the moment, so even after those pit stops, Seitz not able to close this gap down. 18 minutes left. It'll be about 10 laps left. This is Peter Hallstrom in 7th position, potentially at threat from Remigio de Pasqua. Ayrton Senna de BMW.
Okay.
Throw out De Pasqua catching Hallstrom. How about Hallstrom catching Coulomb?
I saw that happening a few laps ago. That's kind of cool. We're going to get a P6 battle with 16, a little less than 17 minutes to go. Meanwhile, Seitz scraped the wall a little bit. I think had a skid, but I don't know if it was enough to break his car.
So in white and blue is Richard Coulomb. Behind that is Peter Hallstrom. Behind that, Ragnar Wisloff, the race leader, is not far away from lapping them. And I think Hallstrom pulls out of the way very early of Wisloff and Seitz. Cost himself a bit of time. Cost himself a bit of time compared to Remigio de Pasqua here as well. That's, if anything, perhaps too sporting of Peter Hallstrom. There goes Ragnar Wisloff. There goes Greg Seitz. Oh no! At the hairpin.
Oh no.
Hallstrom, offline, has driven into the concrete wall, knocked the front off the car 3 times apparently, according to that imagery.
Remix. And I was gonna say that Ayrton Senna drove a Brabham back in '83. And that Brabham was BMW engine. BMW powered. Oh no.
Was that a test while he was still doing F3?
It was a test. Yeah, it was a test while he was at F3. Yeah, you're correct.
So this, oh man, that was never gonna. What? How did he end up on the marbles there?
I want to say maybe if you can rewind to the entry of turn 9, I think by the time he actually stroked the curb threw him offline a little bit, and that was enough for him to go on the marbles, because or the car skidded a little bit, so he didn't find any grip, and unfortunately went to the marbles.
So it puts Randy Shoemaker as the driver with the most positions gained. Shoemaker qualified 11th and runs 5th right now. Franz Josef Sturm qualified 7th and runs 4th. Leif Hellberg qualified 5th and runs 3rd. Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz run where they qualified 1st and 2nd. In qualifying, separated by only a small margin. In this racing, separated only by a small margin. But in both cases, it remains a slim advantage to the Norwegian Ragnar Wisloff.
You know, gotta end outsides, David. He's trying everything on his car. You know, trying to go in from what it looks like on some more aggressive turn entry to try to cut down some deficit. But like I said before, this track is so brutal for you to cut time and then get into a fighting position because you don't have too many places to overtake, especially on a low power car like this. That it can get easily frustrating during your stint run. That I think at this point Vislov is just getting more comfortable and he's way more comfortable in the car than Seitz is.
Someone's there at turn 1 with damage.
I want to say O'Malley.
Yeah, probably. Not what the race leaders wanted to see. Because I think they'd gone wide and were sort of parked beyond the apex. Steve O'Malley. Yeah. Now there's your 1980s Brabham BMW as well.
Yeah.
Steve O'Malley. Do you know what? I respect that. Came to a stop, reversed it, didn't drive into the wall at 20 kilometers an hour like some other drivers we've seen. I think the slower you go into the wall, the more embarrassing it is. And I extend that to my own father reversing into things in car parks.
Oh man, don't get me started. Otherwise, I'm gonna have nightmares of my mom trying to reverse her car out of the house I used to live in back in Brazil, of our garage. It was a double gate, so she had to open one of the gates, go out, and then close that gate and open the other gate. Let's say we had some moments. We still have from time to time.
Approaching 50 minutes of Greg Seitz being able to see Ragnar Wisloff and not do a whole lot about it. Randy Shoemake, biggest gainer in this race. We said qualified 11th. Runs 5th at the moment. He had a really quick pit stop, a really late pit stop. And in doing that, he's not only jumped one car or two, but he's also avoided all of the Remigio de Pasqua, Mike Brandy, and other shenanigans.
Hey man, what I told you earlier. What was the rule number 1 thing about this racetrack? Avoid the walls.
Pay full price.
No, avoid the walls. Don't pay full price. It was rule number 2.
Right, only go on 20-cent wing nights.
Yes. And you got to scout them well as well.
You can put that on my grave. Never pay full price for wings. This is the race leader. As you can see, 5th place is just up the road from him, so it'll be 4 cars on the lead lap momentarily. This is, of course, a very short lap here at Long Beach, just 3 kilometers. Makes it less than half a Mount Panorama Bathurst. Of course, everything is either larger than or smaller than Bathurst. So Sebring, shorter than Bathurst. Daytona, road course, shorter than Bathurst. Road America, longer than Bathurst. Le Mans, longer than Bathurst. Nürburgring Nordschleife, longer than Bathurst. VIR Full, shorter than Bathurst. VIR Grand West, longer than Bathurst.
Okay.
Throw another racetrack at me. I've got this.
Okay, here. Let me think. Le Mans, but hold up. The Bugatti circuit.
Shorter than Bathurst.
Fair. Ooh, I know it's probably gonna say longer than Bathurst, because it is. I'm trying to think why it's like
But
smaller tracks.
longer than Bathurst, but not more vertical elevation change than Bathurst.
Oh yeah, I know. But Bathurst, I think, has that track beat in a heartbeat. Right? I think because I'm trying to think of another racetrack.
Tiny bit of traffic for the race leader here, and it looks like Randy Shoemake just goes a bit wide there. Lets Ragnar Wisloff through. Greg Seitz will, of course, be hoping for the same treatment inside of the final 10 minutes of this race, but he's just not close enough, is he?
Nope, not even close. Oh, okay. Riverside the long Grand Prix layout. Like the one they ran back in the early 80s.
Is that different to the one that NASCAR ran at Riverside?
Yes.
Oh, it's probably going to be longer, isn't it?
5.3 kilometers. $5,311 to be more exact. Which I'm gonna be honest with you, David. I thought it was going to be a little bit shorter.
Greg Seitz is still not past Randy Shoemake yet, so this is seeing Ragnar Wisloff's lead extend as far as about 3 seconds. Over the hill we go, and Randy Shoemake's to the right. Greg Seitz is on the racing line, back through into second position. Four laps to go. I'll go and jinx it. This is looking like a race that is very rewarding to Leif Hellberg's patience, because he spent, I think, more than the first half of the race right behind Remigio de Pasqua, thinking, how am I going to pass this guy for the podium? How am I going to pass this guy for the podium? And then, after the pit stops, he had a good pit stop. He executed around that well, and then Remigio de Pasqua had the longer stop. It would have given Leif Hellberg the podium, and then everything else went upside down for Remigio de Pasqua, including cutting the pit exit, including some damage and other things. So Leif Hellberg has just executed super cleanly to get to the third position. Remigio de Pasqua is just behind Richard Coulomb. Either again or for the first time with 5 minutes to go here.
I think it is for the first time. Their gap when he came out of the pit lane was about 9 seconds, so I thought it was a doable gap for him to cut down. The question was when that gap was going to be cut. Go from give or take 3 more laps, right, David?
Yes, Ragnar Wisloff's just crossed the start-finish line, so I think it's 3 more to go. Remigio de Pasqua's just gotten ahead of Richard Coulomb for 6th place. And don't think great things are going to happen with this look at Steve O'Malley. He was far more graceful at navigating turn one the previous time, and this time it's gone long and straight into the wall. Blue and white blends in, unfortunately, in that pattern. So just as I'd said, I respect it. He's gone and made that mistake. Randy Shoemake from 5th. Put a bit of damage on his car, no doubt, particularly around the front right. Sergio De Pasqua, with 2 laps to go, is just 2 seconds behind him. So having passed Richard Coulomb just a lap or so ago, there is a significantly damaged Randy Shoemake, number 3. Now, Randy Shoemake has a meatball flag, but as he's picked it up within 3 laps of the checkered flag, he doesn't need to serve it. You can cross the checkered flag with a meatball flag. You can't cross the checkered flag with a drive-through penalty or a slowdown penalty still looming. And geez, he's got to use the wall to help him turn. Remigio De Pasqua gets back into the 5th position, and Randy Shoemake thinks this can't carry on for 2 more laps. And I think with that suspension damage, he would be right. 2 more laps to go. Ragnar Wisloff with a 3.7 second lead over Greg Seitz. Both of them a minute clear of 3rd place man Leif Hellberg, and Franz Josef Sturm into 4th position. Remigio De Pasqua squeaks back into 5th with a couple of late race moves on Coulomb and on Shoemake.
Yeah, so we're just waiting out to the end of this race, basically, and see Wislov cap off this championship and basically crown himself one more time here on 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Seitz put up a good fight. I'm not gonna say that it wasn't a good fight between them. Seitz gave his all, but of course, again, it's such a difficult circuit for you to be on someone's back bumper the entire time and then try to find openings that are simply none. So it was a good foul while it lasted. Last lap.
Three more kilometers of the Long Beach circuit and 3 more kilometers 60 Plus Racing Adventures BMW M2 CS series. Service still ongoing for Randy Shoemake. Don't know if he'll be able to get out to take that checkered flag. Ragnar Wisloff just needs to be clean enough the rest of the way around here to take the race win. Race winners so far this season have been Steve Greenwood, Greg Seitz, then Steve Greenwood again. Greg Seitz, another run of 2 wins. Ragnar Wisloff picked up his first at round 6. Greg Seitz went on a 4-race winning streak at Summit Point, Magello, Silverstone, and VIR. Ragnar Wisloff was the winner a week ago at Misano, and looking for his 3rd win of the season. The final hairpin. Ragnar Wisloff with just the tiniest bit of traffic. I don't think it'll bother him too much though. With the checkered flag awaiting, he'll leave Eugene Clark from going a lap down and take his 3rd win of the season. But with more wins to his name, more points, Greg Seitz will become the season champion in a great tussle back and forth between Ragnar Wisloff and Greg Seitz. Leif Hellberg a minute away from completing the podium. You'll be able to find a few spare front bumpers around the place after this one as well.
Yeah, good racing for everybody. I think there's still a few cars on the racetrack. We're looking what it looks like to be, I was gonna say Hall, Larkin, and also Holstrom finishing, but good good race between everybody. Of course, Long Beach hard racetrack. I mentioned this, I think, many times already in this broadcast for people to tackle on. But as long as you survive the walls and everything, you should be just fine. That's what matters the most.
60 minutes of Long Beach is quite the endurance challenge in these BMW M2 cars. Ragnar Wisloff, the winner from Greg Seitz, Leif Hellberg, completing the podium there. Franz Josef Sturm, last car left on the lead lap by the looks of things. In fourth place, with the unfortunate late race demise of Randy Shoemaker in that case. Remigio de Pasqua in fifth, Richard Coulomb sixth, Peter Holstrom finished seventh, and then Eugene Clark eighth. Jerry Kerr was very respectful to everyone as he tried to clear out of the way of the leaders multiple times. In 2 laps down, Randy Shoemaker, late race damage, put him to 10th. And then Steve O'Malley, it was going so well for him until he ended up in the wall at turn 1. And then the retirements through this race were Mike Grandy, Neil Canning, Steve Greenwood, Russ Addy, and JC Hay. A race winner will come and speak to us. Congratulations on the race win there, Ragnar. 50 or so minutes of Greg Seitz breathing down the back of your neck.
Thank you, David. Yes, I was thinking, what have I done? 60 minutes of this? But that was a bit intense. You can't miss a single breaking point. You can't miss a single apex. Either you've got Greg Seitz then passing you, or you're going to hit the wall somewhere. This was, intense.
I've heard a lot of talk about this car and its brakes. Some people find it challenging. What's been most challenging about that?
Well, you have to forget a little bit about the braking points you have in most other cars, GT3s and the single-seaters. You need to brake softly, and you need to brake long time before you normally would. But if you do that, it's fine. I wouldn't say the brakes is the most challenging thing. I think the rotation, to get used to the rotation in the car, that's what takes the most time. And but once you master it, you can really use it to your advantage. But the rotation is absolutely wonderful. I mean, the wheel is almost straight in most of the corners coming out of them.
And as the first season of the BMW M2 CS in 60-plus racing adventures, how do you think it's going? Do you think it'll continue? Do you think people are going to warm to this car?
No, I don't think so. Actually, to be honest with you, this series is meant to be. It's called a challenge, and it's meant to be a little bit of a challenge. We've had. This car was picked because it's free, it was new, it should give reasonably close racing because it's not very quick. I thought it was going to be a little bit like an MX-5, just a little quicker, but I think the performance ceiling of this car is difficult to reach and is quite high. So I think maybe for the next season we'll choose something else. But it's not just a car. We have a slightly different approach to the races in this series. It's meant to be a challenge, so we've had rain, we've had a drying track, we've had a little bit more variation in the weather and the track conditions. In addition to that, it's a standing start. I think that's the only series in this league we have a standing start. We have 5 extra points for 0x. There is no pit limiter here. You have to run your own pit limiter. There is no free repair. You have to take a penalty if you get 10x. So we wanted to reward clean driving. and I think that's what it's done. We have had very, very few incident points through the series.
Well, congratulations, Ragnar. Across the season, the wins sort of being split between yourself, Greg Seitz, Steve Greenwood picked up a couple. Did you notice anything from any of the particular tracks that sort of suited one person's driving style, or why did you come out on top today ahead of Seitz and Greenwood?
Oh, that's difficult to say. I think just to beat Greg Seitz in a straight fight is a win in itself. That's not often you can do. And having, as you said in the beginning, having him sitting, a few tenths behind you for many, many laps, that's a challenge. No, I don't know. It's hard to say. I haven't really, in the middle of the season, I had a little bit of a medical break. I'm back now, but no, it's hard to say. Maybe it's practice. I really had to practice for this track. You have to practice here. I saw a few guys leave, and I think that's probably because they hit the wall too hard. You can't really hit the wall.
Well, congrats once again to you, Ragnar, and the season draws to a close for this category in 60 Plus Racing Adventures.
It does. So let me congratulate Greg Seitz on the win in the series, and thank you to all of the drivers who've turned up to this slightly different challenge from the others, and look forward to next season. And thank you guys for always having such good commentary.
Thank you, Ragnar. Well, Lorenzo, 60 minutes at Long Beach ends, and what did you notice most from today's race?
Well, it basically showed the commitment from the drivers, to try to get to the end. I think Ragnar, like I said, I think it might have said it. This is a car that is very hard to drive. It is very different from your normal BMW counterparts in the M4 and the GT3 and GT4, specifically the GT4 being the most close counterpart. But other than that, congratulations to Greg. Hoping to see the challenge come in next season. Let's see in what car will it be. We don't know. We're gonna hold our hands together and fingers crossed to see what car it will be. But looking forward to what next season brings to us.
60 Plus Racing Adventures BMW M2 closes at Long Beach. The final chapter giving a win to Ragnar Wisloff, the championship to Greg Seitz. I've been David Haynes with Lorenzo Bonda. Production by Ramiro Augustin Cisneros here on RaceSpotTV. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next season of 60 Plus Racing Adventures to bring you plenty of their multiple of racing leagues.